Good morning. My name is Mathews Wakhungu. I'm a private economist. I'm a research principal at KounkueyDesign initiative. And I'll let my colleague introduce himself. Good morning. My name is Allan. I think listening to the several days of presentation, and I think it's been a really good environment for us from a different sector, from behaving one. And I think we come to you with a different story. In this case, trying to really look at the experiences working in communities, specifically informal settlements, and what does it mean to translate this data models to policy, to agents of information, institutions, to communities, and really specifically talking about last mile connection in Allan systems. And I think to do that requires a lot of good grounding that listens to the community in terms of the context of where that information goes, and then specifically looking at also participatory approaches. And I think as part of our conversation today is really to look at the contextual and responsive flood mapping and learning from practice, specifically from informal settlements. Perhaps just to give you a context of who we are, KDI, KounkueyDesign initiative, as we may see, Kounkuey, to know something intimately, has foundations, high foundations, because one of the founders, the foundations of KDI were from Singapore students. One of them happens to Thai, and the other one was Kenyan, and the influence of the Kenyan kind of began, and that's where someone work started in Kenya, and KDI has since grown from Kibra, and now has established US office, and the latest building is in Sweden. Just based on those foundations, I think just learning about Kounkuey, so a non-profit working in urban development, specifically informal settlements, and really the foundations were productive public spaces that to some extent address flooding issues. Well, several service areas, that's where we work. We have a planning department. We have a research and testing research department that does all the research and testing, advocacy, design and build. And you may have heard from Kesia, who had another very illustrative poster. She's from the community department. And within all these things, we are really, really working towards neighborhood equity and aspects of urban justice as well. Just to reflect about the foundations, I think what you see on the top image, those are maybe typical consultancy clients when you talk about clients. But for KDI, the clients are the community. We work closely with the community, and the communities are our clients. And that has been the foundation principle in our work. And just to reflect upon that, I think now I think the conversation here is how then do we ground data models, early warning messages into the community. And perhaps just to carry over the conversation, I'll invite my colleague Allan, who will share some of these experiences.
Yeah, thank you, Mathews. So since KDI was established in 2006, we've been working in informal settlements. Like he said, we started in Kibera, and most of the projects that KDI has been doing since then are small-scale, high-impact projects along the rivers within Riparian. And while doing that, we realized one thing, that there's a lot of issues that environmental issues, social, but also economic issues that needed to be addressed. And so part of what we need to do is to start to gather some data, and that meant also starting to do some flood models to see which areas do we have the highest flood risks. So maybe somebody might wonder why they focus on informal settlements. So most of Nairobi is informal settlements, and one along water courses that dissect different sections of the city. So what you see on the bottom left, that's Kibera, and that will be our focus for today. So this is an aerial image of Kibera. What you see around the center, closely packed, those are the roofs of the informal settlement. And what you see around the center, that's a highway that dissects the settlement into two. So this is the kind of environment KDI works in, and that's where it started, and also to share more today. So whenever it rains heavily, this is the kind of images we see in Kibera and many other informal settlements across the city. Lots of flooding that impact houses that are close to the river because of the population pressure. People have built almost even over the river itself. Then these are some of the images you see. Afterwards of a flooding event in Kibera. This was 2019, and this area we lost about the energy during this flooding incident. These are different area, but a year after, in 2020, and this is the kind of damage that you see whenever there is heavy floods in Kibera. Now, so what's the challenge? So like I said, we've been working since 2006, but then in 2017, there was need to take things to another level, and when trying to do that, we realized that early warning reduction is difficult in informal settlements. This is where more than 60% of Nairobi residents live. But also at that time, we were faced by lack of data for informal settlements, and this dates back to pre-independence. Informal settlements have been neglected in so many ways, even in terms of planning, data collection, and such like. However, they're impacted by so many things, including things like riparian reserves, because like I mentioned, most of these informal settlements are found along the river courses. But then in law, we have about 9 legal provisions that talk about rivers, and some of these are contradicting, including in terms of how we measure our riparian reserves. If that 30-meter corridor is to be applied in informal settlements, we risk losing so many students. The other thing that see as a challenge is that the uniform riparian zone that is meant to protect rivers is such a simplistic approach. Doesn't take into account the local complexities that we see in informal settlements. And there's been a lot of talk in this conference about flood modeling, the very technical terms. And we were saying that it's really good for defining the risk area, especially in informal settlements. However, informality is very unpredictable, and rapid developments in these informal settlements exacerbate flooding and complicate flood modeling. So that's why we came in this way back in 2017. So KDI partnered with the Bureau of Herbal Engineering to do flood modeling in Kibera. And to do this, we needed some rainfall data, so we partnered with Kenya Meteorological Department. But also we went to the field to collect some river level measurements, and this we were able to get some inflow data. The other input is we also collected data on topographic water course information, and that meant using some satellite catchment, doing some satellite catchment boundary analysis, some water course analysis, but also aerial photography of hydraulic structures, and that would be cross-section data. And went back to the field with some testing and modification, which later we used to produce a 1D hydraulic model for the entire Kibera informal settlement. So the modeling was done on hectares. None of us here is a flood modeling expert, but work closely with them. But that's what was used. But then what you see on the bottom left are images of some fieldwork, some measurements, and the image at the center is the flooding incident that was used. And image E is just to show how flood levels can go quite high, 1.5 meters, almost 1 meter. So The other bit to that was also going back to those flood models, the community, to capture and integrate their local flood knowledge. And you see there is one of the sessions that we had, we were able to generate from what I just shared. So the other bit was this, from the flood modeling that was done with KDI and Bureau happened in 2017. And we see at the bottom right, there's the Nairobi Dam. It's not a dam anymore, it's something else, but whenever it rains, then signs of being a dam comes back. Also on the same period, we, through a collaboration with Technical University of Kenya, we were able to this 2D flood model that covers the entire Kibera and the surrounding areas. Then this is just a zoom in of one of the Kibera villages, though it doesn't lie close to the river, but it experiences a lot of flooding. Now, Mathews talked about the flood model. So part of what we did again between 2017 and 2021 was this longitudinal study that we named Community Responsive Adaptation to Flooding in Informal Settlements. So we did waves and cycles of household surveys, both physical, and during Corona we did some remote surveys. So a cycle basically means 2 settlements being surveyed at once, but then waves means pre-rainfall and post-rainfall, so that we're able to compare. So we chose, based on our flood model, we're able to choose 6 sites across the settlement. And in each of the sites, we had about 250 households that we surveyed and tracked them over the 4.5-year period that we did this. So what you see there is part of what we're able to find in 2017. Our current assessment of flood, but also we're trying to see the impact and quantify these impacts of the households that we are surveying. So it didn't stop there. Last year and part of this year, I went back to do further flood modeling. Like we said, informal settlements, they are not static, they change, every day because of so many reasons, new buildings coming up, a lot of structures being built, the river channels, government building highways through the settlement. So to go back and do this kind of flood modeling, and when you see the red circles, these are the areas that we choose for study that I showed the house of something. So I let my colleague Mathews speak again from this point.
I think what Allan has not mentioned, you could see some of his images here. He's a superstar on the ground, and that's something he has mentioned. What is the name of the guy wearing the West Ham shirt? Gaucho? He's become quite popular. You remember the name? Yeah, he's quite popular within the community as someone who has gone in the community, became a numerator, and now become almost like a citizen scientist within the community, well known. At some point before even joining KDI, Allan has worked with him. And some other time, I think you may have listened to Allan's presentation on social capital. We go in and we meet him, being able to support. So there are a lot of community resources and knowledge within that community. And I think one of the key things, I think, in our critique of this kind of distance approach, because of lack of data in informal settlement, was this idea that now, within the context of the recent flooding in May 2024, is that the government imposed an arbitrary 30-meter rule for the riparian zone, defining the riparian zone, and that had really significant implications on the communities. For example, in this image, you may see that when we went to say what does the implication of a 30-meter riparian zone, that was the initial presidential directive, and then there was another follow-up directive that extended into 60 meters for 30 to include a 30-meter planning zone. And when we looked at it, this is the kind of significance it had. It means looking at even the classification of residential and commercial, there are a lot of critical community infrastructures that were under risk of being demolished. And that had a really significant impact on even how the community responds and adapts to flooding. So that's something that I think just looking at the idea of grounding data models is so important, because then more often we can miss out on that critical information that allows communities to adapt to climate change. And for example, now, even within that context, is what are the new insights based on this kind of historical and local knowledge of risk? Is that I'm not a GIS expert, but in some of the interpretation here, you could see some of our KDI staff going and validating that those kind of maps, flood extent maps, and that there was a 60-meter riparian zone. It means it wasn't uniform. There are areas that had even a larger flood extent, but then there are areas that were, and again, the demolitions will not cover that. But based on the information that we've already found, that even sometimes even the 60-meter, the flood extent will even go beyond the 60-meter that government has imposed. So I think that's something critical for us to learn and see how then we ground our data models in a context where there's no data. And then I think one of those things, I think Mark is here, and Mark, you can either validate, you can either accept it, as kind of statement that all models are wrong. That's something that perhaps you can talk more about it. But I think we added something that unless they are grounded, I think that's something we really wanted to, they are grounded and validated with the community. I think that's something significant. But therefore, I think one of our critical reflections, even just from a very practice perspective, is then even as we innovate on early warning systems and technologies, how do we make those tools accessible to the community? And when we talk about the communities, we're talking academics, policy, agencies, situation groups, but what are those opportunities to get that data to be used within communities? I think that's something for us to reflect on. But even that, I think then there is another aspect that comes in. There is this kind of epistemological conflict between scientific knowledge and indigenous knowledge, as you may speak. One example is communities are quite receptive to, for example, they are very receptive to this kind of idea of a flood model contributing to the community. And that means that even early warning messages could be really taken positively, and you see communities. And I think that's something we need to reflect on, and really looking how to integrate local knowledge into these data models and embracing this idea of knowledge. And I think one specific case study that I may need to reflect on is a project called Taraja, which is a Swahili for bridge. This project within the WISER program with the UK Met. And this program works to really decipher early warning messages to communities. And here the project will actually work with community groups and leaders to be able to distill information from the Kenyan Meteorological Department into messages that communities can understand. And that information is then sent to WhatsApp groups. It will be given to local community radio stations. And that information has been really critical, even in the recent floods, that you find people relocating their homes, moving their families and possessions to higher ground, but also really, really specifically being able to prepare for their floods. I think that's one critical example of how to, and how to, the Rada project was piloted in 2018 and now is expanding beyond Kenya and Tanzania, which were the original pilot areas. And then there's another specific item, even as we think about technology and design of data models in early warning, is the idea of community resistance. Having seen the map that I showed you of community assets, communities will be very resistant on the idea of a data model that puts their community assets under threat. I think that's something that we have learned, and that makes it difficult that even the recipients and the immediate recipients of data, being people in situation groups or even government, there is a difficult and tense relationship within, even for example, in the local context, the government and the community. So we may need to find ways in which sometimes data can get directly to the community, even prepare ground for government to pass these messages. So I think that's something, a very interesting dimension to think about. But even as we do this, how then do we think about community assets? Because those community assets are so critical in how communities respond and repair their livelihoods after floods. Thank you so much, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you for so, do we have any questions from the audience? Yeah, then I have comments also for Allan.
So thank you very much for the presentation. Really impressive. I think you did a fantastic job, honestly. And just to invest very quick. So what are the better if you have any information about the event here in this year, if there was a need in the district of Iberia, since I'm glad we get information about this. And the second question is if it would be possible eventually to share some data about the ground truth you collected with the past event in Semaria. Try to add other techniques to monitor observe these kind of events from the space and to understand if we can be effective also in this kind of informal assessment. It would be very helpful to us be able to connect. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll try and understand. So I think the first question is on whether there was impact in Kibera from the last flooding event in May. Yes, so there was a impact in the settlement. We are yet to quantify, but we have some data from certain pockets, the high risk areas, because after the event we're going to do some rapid enumeration exercise. So well, it's not yet in a format that can be shared, but then we're going to get some data on the impact. And the second, you're asking whether we are able to share data that we collected from ground truthing. First event. Yeah, so I think there's data that can be shared from past event, but if you need really comprehensive data, then it might need to come to us like a formal data request. So that we also ask our partners if we can be shared.
So, great presentation, really interesting work. Quite a long period, I noticed. Good experience. The question I've got is to do with this 30-meter arbitrary buffer zone. I guess with the work you've been doing, you can show that's much more complex. Do you think that you can influence the comments closely on that zone and maybe make it a little more realistic, shall we say?
I think that has been the idea since the direct position that Acadia is part of a coalition actually in a project called Nairobi Rivers and People. This kind of conversation includes the Nairobi Rivers Commission, which has was a presidential commission that was put together to do a lot of integration of rivers around the city. And I think as part of that coalition, definitely that is our role, is that to use this kind of information to advocate for the thinking of this idea of a 30-meter and 60-meter riparian zone. Some of the maps that we've shown here were presented to the coalition, and even we had very specific messages going all the way to the private sector for internal security. So I think part of the work we in the community and coalition that we have built has been advocating and much more upwards about this kind of idea and this info that is more much in the more context rather than this one of this kind of approach to
use my digital email last question. And well, I mean, it's very important work, and we have a lot of experience actually with this stuff in Italy. And since 2018, we're able, just wanted to share past backwards and this type of approaches. So each approaching collaborative mapping is by law. I mean, so you cannot develop now in Italy, just that is not done in this way. Before it was a good practice, now it's like a new pattern. So, and I think it has really changed the actionability of the discipline since then. However, I mean, I live in curiosity. I mean, we are having many times when we go, I mean, really like in the communities, like in Italy, since Italy is one of the oldest population, I would say, in Europe for sure, it's the oldest country, but I think worldwide we're very well placed. And we have a lot of challenges. I mean, making, you know, that has to the attention to understand, even to read the map, and not to mention about that. So you are working in a totally different environment, since I'm doing a page structure, culture, whatever. And I was just curious, I mean, do you have the same issue? Are your people, I mean, kind of, you know, snapping into that, I mean, without issues or problems? I mean, is that easy? I mean, for you to come with scientific data, validate that at the community level?
Thank you for that question. I think in Nairobi we have a different, we have a very little population, and in our informal settlement state we are very most of the time we are with it's like seen from the photos. But also sometimes we come across these old people who sometimes they can be seem to be a little stubborn. They have lived there for a long time. Maybe they have some very strong attachments to wherever they live. So when, for example, you come with maps and show them that maybe your structure lies in an area that is maybe not safe for you because of floods, then that could, you know, bring some issues or approaches you want to not really come like we're saying that we are here to be cheap, but rather to sit down with you, see that for sure whenever you think is a flood zone, and you're not saying you're going to demolish something, but this is something that can be used to perhaps stay safe, but also if there's some government intervention that needs to be done, you'll be better to account as someone. So long path, you don't have any rights to. I think it's not so hard in the young people, they tend to quite easily understand maybe because they are tenants and the other older people are actual structure owners. So the issue they want structure, not tenants. Tenants can be different, structure owners can be different.
Thanks again.
Yeah. Just a final one. I would really work for us to pitch KDI. If you're looking for a partner, local partner with serious grounding, validate data models and advanced systems and experiences, I think we are for. And our work has expanded, and now KDI in the US has footprint in Latin America. Now Kenya and Sweden will be working within the European context. So thank you, and those are emails. Feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you, Mathews.